All right, well, we're going to pick up just a little bit more left with foundations and identity of recreational sports. Um, and again, this is Recreation 308, Coastal Carolina University, and I am Dr. Don Rocky. So let's look at, last couple videos we've talked about, the connection between leisure, recreation, and sport. And we talked about participation versus active and passive participation. Today, what we're kind of continuing to build on these ideas is one of the things we want to look at is kind of one thing you have to think about is sport development and how are we looking at developing people as well as the programs that we're offering. And so this hierarchy or pyramid kind of helps show what happens a lot of times in sport. And so, when you were younger, what did you do? You got the foundations, you got the basics. In baseball, you learned how to field a ground ball, you learned how to swing the bat, you learned how to throw. You got those foundations down that you were going to use later on as you advance in your playing career, right? And then you moved up to, okay, we've got the basics, we've got the skills, we've got the practice, those little introductory type activities that you do. Then you start participating and you get into games. But the big encouragement here is just participation, getting involved, and using sport as a way to participate in, I guess, life, right? And so we want that participation. And so, then you move and as you kind of get your skills and you find out that you really like this particular sport and maybe that you're good at it, you move up and you start focusing on performance. And performance is, all right, now we're narrowing it down like the pyramid does. It gets smaller at the top. We're narrowing it down, excuse me, to just the people who are performing pretty good. And we're going to focus on wins, losses, okay? So that foundation is those introductory leagues that we usually do with those kids and small children. Those 3 to 5 year old ranges. Excuse me, just got really dry. Then we move up to participation, and that participation we get into the older age kids now. And then we get into performance. The focus is about winning. And unfortunately, a lot of times when parents get involved, that's where we try to push everybody right away, is into that performance realm. And this top apex of this pyramid is excellence. That's where you get into those really, really good athletes, or we classify as athletes within that particular sport, performing at the top level of performance there and getting into the kind of the professional ranks. And so the focus of this is the question over here says is who and what does this model focus on? Well, it focuses on the participant, but really it focuses on the participant to get them moved up to each of those levels through this hierarchy to get better at the particular sport. Okay. And so one of the things we have to think about is, what is our purpose? Are we going to try to be foundational? Are we trying to be participation? Are we trying for performance? Okay, we have to have an understanding of where our participants are on this model as we move forward. And it shouldn't always be about the excellence in performance. The leisure sport model, or that's recreational sport model that was proposed by Maul, it looks at it this way. And it's kind of looking at it very similar to what we saw in that other one. So educational sport, looking at the foundation, teaching sport and teaching through sport, helping people understand the concepts, the rules, the guidelines of the sport, as well as the skills and improving their skills. And then you get into recreation, where it's more about participation, getting people involved, getting them playing. It's not necessarily about that performance level. It's about getting people out there and playing. And that can happen at any level, any age group can do that. The athletic level here or athletic sport is now you're looking at the high school level with that performance, high school, getting into the college level, and then that apex, that excellence is that pro sport. And what happens as you move down the pyramid, participation increases. As you move up the pyramid, you're getting more about spectator and being a spectator involved in it. You know, educational sports, there's not too many spectators for that. Maybe the parents come out and watch the kids run around on the soccer field or learn about how to do kicks and headers and throw it in. But they're getting those basics, okay? But not too much spectator action there. Again, recreation, it's about parents coming out and watching their children participate, or grandparents or other family members coming out and watching, but it's not, you're not going to see it on television, thank God, and you're not going to see it you're not usually going to have to pay to go watch it, right? When you get into that athletic sport and this pro sport, that's where it becomes more about spectators and the commercializing of it, where you come and watch. Okay. So again, what are we focused on? You have to think about your audience and what you're trying to accomplish with that audience, with those participants, and how you fit in these models. A lot of times we try to, like I said, throw those kids right into that performance level, that athletic sport level, and that's not where they're at. They're in the educational or the recreational realm. And that's why so many kids get run off of sport, is because we push them up there too fast. Okay. Looking at some of the dimensions of sport and kind of what their focus is, and when we look at recreational sport, you'll see that instructional sport, where it's about teaching the skills, teaching the rules, teaching the guidelines, the etiquette that goes along with the sport. And it's about, sport and instruction to increase the performance, to get better. Okay? But a lot of times, and that can happen again at every level. I initially said it focuses on those children. That lays that foundation, that education. But we can still have that education level taking part in all sport. I mean, pros are still learning about how to play their sport and still getting tips on performance and adjusting, and so there is that element to it. Informal sport, a lot of you probably participate in informal sport. You go to the HT or Williams-Brice and you hop on a court and play pickup basketball. You go to HTC Center and walk in and go up and start lifting weights. You don't have somebody, setting up guidelines for you. You don't have somebody setting up what you're going to do. You have the freedom to choose what you're going to do at that particular point in time, and that's informal. It's self-directed. You have the freedom to choose what you want to do. You pick up your surfboard and you go out to the ocean and you hop on and start riding the waves. Okay, it's informal. Intramural brings a little bit more formality to it. A lot of, intramural, we a lot of times focus on college campuses, intramurals, and being within that community of college students and staff and faculty and participating in that. But it can also be a community. So Conway, the Conway Parks and Rec puts on their youth soccer program. It's basically intramurals. It's for their community. It's inside the community. Intra is inside the community. So that's sets up, and you'll see leagues, tournaments within that, youth sport, adult sport. It's basically structured contest with eligibility restrictions. Intramurals, you have to be a member of that college campus, or, a lot of times in communities, they want you to be part of that community because you're basically paying tax dollars to that, and so they're using that as a support, right? Extramurals is when you get into competition outside of your community against other communities, other states, other nations, and that's extramurals. You're getting into those bigger realms. What's the focus on there? Winning, right? Winning, and the very structured, and the focus is winning and showing that your community is better than somebody else's community in that particular sport at that particular time, right? Club sport is kind of a takes the two and puts them kind of together, where club sport is a sport group from one community that competes against others, but it has that more instructional, recreational element to it. It still can be competitive, but the level is not as high as oftentimes what the extramurals are. Okay? So still have that competition. You're still a lot of times competing outside your own community, but it's often driven by internal leadership. Okay, so if you take part in a club sport here on campus, who are your leaders? The leadership comes from members of that group. Whereas extramurals and intramurals, it comes from somebody outside to set it all up. Okay? And so those are some of the realms where you're going to see recreational sport and sport taking place. The scope of sport, you'll see it takes place in multiple sectors. There's a lot of different areas where you'll see it: profit, nonprofit, for-profit, public. Recreation is the 5th largest job market in the United States. Sport is about 50 to 80% of recreation programming revolves around sport. You see a lot of times they have agencies will have several people designated to handling recreational sport programming. About 50 million youth participate in organized sport annually, just to give you the impact it has on young people and then amounts. 40 countries have national sport for all policies, so that using sport as a way to develop their population and having it as a means initiative set up to help those individuals. And so have a little clip or a website there that you can take a look at. The sporting good industry, multi-billion-dollar enterprise in the United States. You know, not just shoes, but everything: golf clubs, tennis racket, football equipment, baseball bats. Holy cow! Son's really involved in baseball, and now the price of bats. Just spent $400 on a bat. Not too long ago. So it's multi-billion-dollar industry. 8 out of 10 college students utilize campus recreation. Think about each of you. How many times have you played intramurals or going in to worked out or done some activity that's offered through campus recreation? So surprised that there's still 2% out there that don't. And commercial recreation, huge profit potential. We can provide opportunities. Several of you expressed in your videos that you want to work in commercial recreation. You want to own your own gym. You want to have your own baseball facility. You want to have, work in tourism. It's all commercial recreation. Huge potential profits there. And sport for community development, national diplomacy, international peace. Sport is a way to do that. Sometimes the only way we get countries to agree is to play on the sporting field, and that's one thing they can agree upon and do it. And the same thing happens with people. Sometimes the only way we can get them to even interact is through sport, and it does a lot, and diplomacy and towards international peace, understanding of each other through athletics and sport. I'm going to go ahead and stop there and finish up these last 2 slides on another video. So we'll come back and talk a little bit about community sport development and finish up this foundation area.